Wait on. Perfect. Sort of. Sort of. I had layers on this morning and I'm sitting in the sun and I avoided doing this live stream and I tried to sit down and do something else. I'm like, Hannah, you need to get on live stream and talk about this because it's been on my mind. Wanted to do it last week, but I've been going over the edits in my book and sent it back to the editor. So it's getting close. And in the meantime, I'm going to talk about the transition because I know my book has a lot to do with this transition, but so does another, like a huge pile of other things that are, I just feeling called to talk about because I think it's something that, you know, everybody goes through life changes. I'm just sharing this live stream as I get set up here. Everybody goes through life changes, but the thing is that the way society is trained is to not even acknowledge them or take a pill and get on with it and shut up and should be over it by now and, you know, get on. Do you know what I mean? Like, no wonder society's fucked up. Like going through a transitional change is massive. And, you know, it's like when somebody dies, you know, in our Western culture, we're just taught to, you know, Western culture, Eastern culture. You know, we're just taught to, you know, okay, funeral's done. Okay. You know, everybody disappears, goes back to work. It's like, you know what I mean? Whereas like we're grieving for ages and it's not talked about enough, you know, like, you know, it's huge, right? A transitional process in your life is massive, no matter if it's the death of your old self, the death of a person, a career change, a house move, like it's massive. And I've been going through like the deepest grief, and I really want to sort of specifically talk about with this eclipse cycle that we've just had because it's really massive. Some of us are really floored by it, myself included. So I'm just going to share this in one more place, and then I want to keep talking about this. What's the matter? You want to talk about it too? Let's all have a talk about it. Want to talk about it? We can talk about it. What's happening? Don't sit on those cords, Bart. How about you sit on your bed? Sit on your bed with Jasmine. Okay, nearly there. So, and then I'm like, I don't actually know what I want to, what I even want to talk about with it. It is a, you know, no therapist will ever mend my heart from the biggest loss of my life, my father. Yeah, and see, this is the thing, right? Like, the thing is that like seeing a therapist, etc., is not about like, especially, okay, so let's get clear on this. The death of a loved one, you will never get over. Never. They're gone from your life forever. Don't need to tell you that. The thing about seeing a therapist or a counselor or a healer is that the piece, and this is where I started talking about like what society is missing when we're taught to just take a pill, get on with it, zip it up. Okay, they're dead now. Okay, funeral's over, get back to work. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we're not, society is taught not to feel, right? Like, we're trained like that for a reason. Because if we really felt our feelings, we would all be in our power and there would be no people in power. At the end of the day, that's reality. Yeah. So like the death of a loved one, the point of seeing a counselor or a healer or a mentor or a therapist, and by the way, it's only someone who can hold space for grief, because the reality is that most therapists, most psychologists, most counselors, most healers, even, there's a lot of spiritual healers out there that are not comfortable with grief. Okay? You have to be able to hold space for your client. without trying to fix, without trying to butt in, without stopping the tears. The thing is that society is taught not to feel, not to grieve. Therefore, we do not heal. There's only a certain amount of breathwork classes, breathwork facilitations, plant medicine ceremonies, like all the fucking things, meditations even, like that will never ever fix the feeling. Grief will, feeling the grief of the loss of what you've lost will fix, will heal. That's the only thing. Everything else is a band-aid. Everything else is a band-aid. You can't plant medicine. You can't meditate feelings away. Ever. Ever. The biggest thing about losing a loved one, okay, and I'm talking about a loved one, I'm talking about death here for some reason. The thing about, but I'm also going to reiterate that this is about death, losing a loved one. This is about this. It might not seem the same, okay, but I want you to see it as the same because it is the same energetically, and so many people miss this crucial point, right? Of the death of a loved one, moving house, a relationship breakup, a career change, something happening in the family that rocks the whole family system is as big as death. It is. 100% it is. Energetically, it is. And so many people miss this. Like, this is like one of the crucialest pieces of healing that people miss. Those points and transitions in life are as big as losing a loved one, right? Now, the reason that, like, the most crucial part of healing, and when I say that when you lose a loved one, right, you will never ever get over it. What I mean by that, okay, and this is a crucial piece, is that many people end up with diseases or anxiety or depression because they're never allowed to feel that grief, meaning society has taught them that way. People are told, just go get on with it now, like, you know, all those sorts of things. The most crucial part of any life change, right, is that you allow yourself to grieve the life change. Now, people can sit in shock for like 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 60 years, okay, because society is trained that way, remember? There's the shock, and that's where we just get on with it. And then it gets to all these like health issues, and we're like, oh, what's happened? Like, what's going on? All these health issues. Quick, take more pills or get surgeries, or like, and it still doesn't fucking fix the problem because you didn't grieve the fact of the massive life change you went through back then. That's all it is surfacing. The thing that you can take from this live stream and moving forward is that whatever life change you go through, whatever major event happens, if you allow yourself to grieve as much as you can in those moments, when it happens, right, on the day, on the week, for the first 3 months, it'll feel like you're a blubbering mess and won't be able to stop crying. And by the way, if something is coming up that you have suppressed until now, and now it's coming up, let yourself have 3 months or 18 months. Seems like a lot, but when you've suppressed something for your whole life, right? When you've suppressed something for your whole fucking life, give yourself 18 months to 3 years of healing. Like, you know, it's like a reality check. Like, this is what it takes, right? Because you can't plant medicine that shit away. You can't meditate that shit away. You can't go to therapy for that stuff. Like, you can't, right? But what you can do is you can grieve. You can grieve. It's the biggest piece that people miss in society. Like, the biggest piece ever. Don't underestimate the power of breath. Yeah? So I'm just going to check these comments. There's a few of you comments there. It doesn't stop. No, crying doesn't stop. Is that what you mean? Hang on, I just didn't check these comments yet. Yes. Gina says, yes, my whole family is in mourning. My daughter's husband was in a car accident. Oh my gosh, that'll be the biggest trauma ever. On Mother's Day. Wow. Maybe a retreat to give my heart a break. I'm only 56, but I'm forcing myself to drink more water, eat healthier, stay active in the process. I have a plan, but I need to leave. Yes. Yeah, and so this is what I work with clients a lot. Like, a lot of people come to me, they're like, what is my life purpose? And I'm like, okay, let's just like, just do a check here. Like, what's mainly going on, right? And it's so important, like, you know, when we're looking for our purpose, there is a period of like clearing out the stuff that you've been carrying for your whole life. Like, it's a reality that what happens, right? And then there's certain points in your timeline that also, you know, like you'll cry more. And when you say you cry every morning, I have for over 2 years, good. Okay. Now, a lot of therapists, a lot of spiritual counselors, a lot of psychologists, a lot of people in general don't agree with me with like, oh, we shouldn't be crying that much and it's bad for your brain. And I'm like, man, for fuck's sake, like, tears release the stress hormone cortisol. Like, when you cry, cortisol releases from that fluid. Just like when we're sweating or going to the toilet, like that gets out of our body for a reason, right? Imagine all that shit backing up, like, right? Imagine the cortisol backing up and what that does to our whole body eventually. And people wonder why they're fucking sick. Like, like, can we just cry for a minute? And this is where I'm saying, like, you know, crying for 2 years every morning is very normal, okay? Very normal when you consider the fact that you've suppressed your whole life to date, okay? Someone who's been crying every morning for 20 years, then I would be questioning, like, would be like, okay, what's going on here? But for 2 years, like, what I say and what I've witnessed with my clients many, many times over and over and over with the years, there's an 18-month cycle and then there's a 3-year cycle, right? So 18 months and 3-year cycle is like, you know, like, allow yourself that level of time to be okay with, like, I'm still crying, what the fuck's going on, rather than like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me, I'm still crying. No, okay, reality check, 3 years, like over a 50-year period or even 30 years or over 10 years is nothing, especially if you've been in domestic violence or abuse or, like, I don't know, all the traumas of life, okay, or you've been busy and burnt out or whatever your story is. It's very normal and very fucking healing, okay? Because feeling is healing. It's our heart, right? You can't plant medicine and just open your crown and then like it's missing. No, it doesn't do that, right? Crying is so healing. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for doctors, there's a time and a place for medication, there's a time and a place for yoga, there's a time and a place for plant medicine, there's a time and a place, there's a time and a place, there's a time and a place. And when all those time and a places don't work anymore, you know what's next, right? So important. So yeah, and the thing is, you know, like when you talk here, like with your, Gina, with your family, that's so full on, you know, like the more that they can be blubbering messes now, like for the first 3 months, like take 3 months off work and cry, you like howl on the kitchen floor, like every day for 3 months, like this, if you can catch and allow when something happens and allow yourself when that wave comes, because there'll be a period of shock, right? And then when the grief starts, if you can like take time off, if you've got the flexibility to do that, do it, okay? Because the more you can grieve when it's fresh, the less problems you're going to have later on, right? So if you were to like told to stop it and you grieve for a little bit, or you're embarrassed, or people were like looking at you like, why are you still crying? Like all that sort of shit, right? If you can allow yourself 3-6 months of howling grief, like can't take another breath, something wrong with me, but I know I need to keep crying. Like, you know, well, of course we're going to be like, oh, something wrong with me, but we know we're doing the right thing. Do you know what I mean? Like the more you can be a blubbering big mess now, the less problems you're going to have later on down the track. And by that, I mean mental illness, cancer, other illnesses in the body, like they all stem from suppressed emotions, okay? And especially when something traumatic happens like this, the more you can grieve when it's in this freshness, right? It doesn't mean that you will never grieve again. But the thing is that healing, timelines, grief, life in general, it happens in cycles, right? There's cyclic timelines that happen in this process, yeah? And I do touch on this in my book, but in my next book, I'm really going to go into all the details of it and et cetera, et cetera. So, like okay, so there's different points in time, okay, but what's so important is it's on Mother's Day. Okay, just for example, right, I'm just going to use this example. It's on Mother's Day. Every Mother's Day this is going to come up. Okay, every you know, and then there's certain timelines, so like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3 years, the 2-year mark as well, 3 years, there's a 7-year mark, and then the 7 years to 10 years will be like it's happening all the time again for each year, you know, and then 10 years, like there's certain timeline points where it will feel like it happened yesterday, and there's a level of grief that's like, oh my God, what's going on? And so if that person isn't allowed to grieve when it's fresh, okay, it gets suppressed. And then say 18 months comes around, it'll be like they're losing their mind, like it's yesterday, because they weren't allowed this grief at the start, right? And so if you allow yourself and or whoever you're coaching, the person to have that level of grief, when the 18 months comes around, they're still going to be like, what the fuck, like it's grieving again, but it won't be like that suppression. That won't have to now come out. And it's usually worse because it's been like all of this time that you've lost, or like just so many factors in it, right? So of course there's timeline points where it's still going to feel like yesterday, but when you can grieve in that point when it's fresh and truly allow like 3, 6 months, like 12 months, 18 months even of just being a blubbering mess. Because the thing that happens, right, is especially if a person has never been allowed to grieve before, they're going to be, using this example, they're going to be grieving the loss of the husband and the whole family's rocked by it, okay? But the thing that happens is that all the suppressed grief from the whole lifetime of all the traumas built up, like we've just been talking about, will also start to come out, because it's like, oh my God, I can let it all out. So even though grieving the husband, everything else is getting a chance to come out as well. So it just feels like a great big mess. And like I said, there's a lot of counselors, psychologists, therapists out there, spiritual healers that do not agree with this. But I guarantee you that in the future, this will be the way of healing, because it's been suppressed in white society, white, black, whatever, in humans, right? I know there's certain cultures that really honor this, right? And you'll see that they're the healthiest ones, they live the longest, blah, 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 blah. Wonder why that is, right? Because they allow grief, because they know it, because they know this, the heart heals, but it can't heal. And that frequency of our heart can't be there if we're not allowed these tears, right? Okay, so just going back here. Yeah, it makes so much sense, right? I have as well. I don't want the world to forget my father. I feel alone with this deep gut heartache and pain. Okay, so it will feel like no one else cares, or if I grieve them properly, if I really allow myself to go this deep in the grief, we're going to forget them. Like, oh my God, like then I won't be able to feel sad about them again. And I'll be like, would have forgotten them. There's guilt that comes up with that. And they're like, oh, I don't want to forget my dad. Or like, there's still a relationship, right? Even though they're not in physical form, they're in the etheric form, and your soul is etheric, like they're still here in that form. The style of relationship changes, but you still have a relationship with your dad, right? And so it's like, there is guilt that comes from people that think if they grieve, they're going to forget. But the reality is you grieve the pain. It's a bit like when people come to me and they don't want to do a past life meditation to unhook from an unhealthy relationship because they're scared of losing the relationship. But what happens is the relationship's always going to be there. You guys have always got a connection, okay? But there's shitty, toxic energy, and then there's beautiful love, right? And there's all that in the relationship. So what healing does is it removes all the shitty, toxic stuff. So only the love and the clear stuff is left. That's really what we want, isn't it? You will always have a connection with somebody. So when it's that fear of like, I don't want the world to forget my father. I don't want to grieve him because then I will forget. It's like, no, you just won't be able, you won't be holding that heavy toxic energy that will drop into illness eventually if it's suppressed, right? But when we can grieve, it allows the beauty to come back of the relationship, right? But it is a process because people do feel guilt like that too, for sure. Okay. Oh, and by the way, first thing in the morning is an awesome time to cry. I know not necessarily convenient for some people. Says the, I don't know, the Galahs or Corellas. you know, like the parrot. Parrot is very heart. It's all about heart. Heart and ears, actually, the birds. New frequency, new reality, new realm, new life. Wanting to be heard. Heard you. Thank you for your message. That's right. So yeah, morning is a really awesome time to cry, and to allow the healing cycles. Like I said, everything happens in cycles, right? And so the grief will come in waves. So you might cry for like 3 days solid and you're like, oh, thank fuck for that. And then like 2 days later, it happens again. It'll wave. Yeah, it'll wave like the ocean. It'll wave like our breath. Yeah. And so this, the morning is a really good time, not always convenient. Is it ever a convenient time to cry? No. But morning is really awesome because we sleep, and when we wake is like our feelings are really present because the day hasn't interrupted our being, if you may, our aura. The being, it hasn't distracted us from feelings and being busy. That's what society's built on, remember? So morning is a really awesome time to grieve. And then also for women, and then for men as well, when they go into cave time. For women, that 10 days before we bleed in our cycle, really, like, so when we're really emotional, right, usually, and so if you catch and know your cycle, mark it on a calendar, like, you know, so you know that 10 days, 2 weeks before you're about to bleed, don't book any social events, have it a little, like, you know, you time, go in, watch a sad movie. Maybe you don't need it at this point. To allow yourself to cry. It's like, work with the cycles of healing. Yeah, work with this flow. Yeah. But yeah, really, you know, the thing is when we are grieving for 2 to 3 years, right, when we talk about these cycles of healing, when you can find the flow, okay, and it might take a bit and it might feel like you're just crying all the fucking time and what's wrong with me, even though you know you need to do this, right? It's like you're allowing it now, giving yourself permission, and it's just going to feel like you're losing your whole life, right? And everything's collapsing. And that's what happens when we grieve, is everything falls away and there's nothing for a time. We come into a void place and there's just nothingness, and it feels empty, but it's everything, but it's nothing, right? It's a stage of healing. And it's like we just allow ourselves to be in these moments. It's a bit like when people say, oh, I'm just numb. I don't feel anything. I'm numb. And it's like, no, actually that's a feeling. Right? Crying's a feeling, anger's a feeling, numb is a feeling, void is a feeling, space is a feeling, happiness is a feeling, right? But we sort of forget that numb is also a feeling. It's interesting, right? Okay. Awesome. I'm so glad tears are coming out on this live stream. Tarot card reading predicted a death in the family. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, so Lisa says, morning. So not always for everyone morning. Again, it's about finding when it is for you, because sometimes we might be up in the morning, or we just don't, we're a bit numb in the morning. And then at different times in our cycle, in our month, depending on the moon, depending if there's an eclipse, depending, like all those factors do contribute. And, you know, it's like crazy energies with the eclipses and stuff like that. A lot of people tend to do die or have major accidents on eclipses. It's kind of a thing I've noticed over the time, unfortunately. So yeah, and when you say, because I find that I cry when I'm dipping chocolate, when I work, I'm relaxed, and when my thoughts of my father go, I will try. Yeah, so it's like, you know, maybe nighttime's better for you. Okay, like I just say, for a lot of people, I have heard a lot of people say to me over the years, like, you know, when I wake up, I'm so angry, or I just cry all the time, or I'm depressed, and I'm like, yeah, like this is a time when these emotions are coming out. Some people can't sleep, and it's because the feelings are waking them up. So they might go to sleep and then they wake up, and it's because the feelings are waking them up. So again, if you allow yourself to grieve, maybe it's when you wake up and that's the only time that you're quiet. You know how sometimes we wake up and get a download from our angels, intuition, guides, soul, God, whatever, and then you can't go back to sleep because you're getting all this information. You have to get up and write it down even, right? It's because you're quiet. It's because you're so busy in your day. The universe, soul, guide, angels, feelings don't have a chance to speak to you because you're just not there. You're like working or busy or purposely distracting. pick your thing, right? And so when you can, you know, like understand that if you're waking up in the night, it's because there's not enough time in the day. So if you create time in the day, so if that's morning, sometimes for me it's morning. Sometimes I'm in this cycle in my life at the moment where my downtime and my connecting time and journaling and meditating is before bed. So I try to, you know, if I like going to bed about 9-ish, don't really like going to bed later. So about 7:30, 8, I sort of go in my room and, you know, to my little altar and meditate or journal or listen to something that makes me cry or whatever I'm processing. It's like my time before bed. Sometimes it's the morning, but in this phase of my life, it is at nighttime. So again, it's like, it doesn't always have to be this. Through different phases of our life, you know, and if we really connect in and tune in like that, and what flow and cycle works for us, we're really going to be connected to our soul, to our goddess intuitive self, to our god warrior self, like just us connecting to our soul, because nothing stays the same ever. Just a period of time and then it changes always, you know? So yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's just about finding your cry time ultimately. Okay, so obviously that message needed to come out. So I just want to share a little bit about myself, which is what this live stream was about, but obviously that was a message that needed to come out. So definitely share that with people if you know that they're not coping with life or grieving or going through something. Like, it's always good to remember and check in, like, okay, what happened 3 months ago, 3 years ago, 18 months ago? Like, check in on those sort of timeline points. Really important, really, really important. Because usually you'll find something back in the thing of like, oh, you know, and I'm at this point, you know, talking about my life, I've been grieving my old self fiercely. Like, fuck, this eclipse season that just gone the last, you know, 6 to 8 weeks fucking floored me. Like, you know, and if you follow me for a while, you'll hear me talk about, I always see humans and consciousness and us conscious people, if you may, whatever, humans. I see that there's almost like two different groups. I'm sure there's more, but I sort of witness these two groups. And when one group is processing stuff and they're like down and all this shit's happening for them, there's another group that's up and they're like, life's amazing. And then at different points in time, it'll switch. So this group will be down and like processing and going through all this shit in their life and big changes and whatever it is. And then this group's like, life's amazing, right? And I just sort of witnessed these two groups. Like, I've noticed it over the years. I've been doing this a long time, right? And anyway, so this eclipse floored me. Like, and I talk about the seasons for the past sort of 6 to 8 weeks, and it's a massive transition. So I know in certain posts, like I haven't really been posting much about it actually, like, you know, and this is part of my life transition and part of what I've been grieving. It's so interesting. And I know I'm still in the process of it. I don't quite know the full big picture of it yet, but I'm letting go of something I never thought I'd let go of. And it's scary, right? It's scary because I'm like, if I don't have that, what have I got? Like, if I don't have my old self, who I actually fucking loved before it got tortured and pulled down and, you know, trampled on and traumatized and told she was stupid and stopped doing this psychic shit and what the fuck are you doing? Like, that really fucking, it cut me. It fucking cut me, and it's taken a long time to heal from that. It really has. Like, I don't know why. I don't know, you know, I think just, I don't know. I thought, I don't know. I don't know what that is, right? And you know, and I do believe to an extent it has a big chunk of, you know, got to do that. I do live by myself. I have lived by myself for 20 years. I haven't had a normal life by far. I've not had a normal life. And, you know, at this point in time, it's like really coming into the fact of realizing that it's like I've just been living it. And now I'm really coming into the fact that I am very different. I mean, like, I've got a moon on my forehead, for goodness sake. Like, how can I not be different, right? But it's like owning that on a different level and coming into the fact that when I first started online 7 years ago, I used to get up, talk about every fucking thing. Like, I built my business on blogging and live streaming every day to get my message out in the world. Like, for a long time, I was teaching yoga classes, doing, you know, in-person psychic readings, teaching workshops, chakra workshops, doing a lot of in-person stuff, you know, mums and bubs yoga, conscious parenting playgroups, the whole thing, right? And I did that for many years. And then I kept sort of getting this feeling. It was like, you know, it was like 10, 20, sometimes 40, 50 people come to my specific yoga class. And then other classes would be like 10 people, and awesome, like, so grateful they came, etc. But I was getting to this point where and it's like an expansion point, right? It's like I could feel that I was like, oh, I'm only talking to 10 people. Like, wasn't that sort of train of thought, but I could feel it. It was like, oh, there's more, there's a message for more, there's, you know, and I could feel this, you know, I guess expansion is really what it was. And and that's when, you know, so back in 2015, 16, I was looking, like I kept getting the message to be online and, you know, doing, I was like, how do you do this online stuff? How do you do this online stuff? And it's like everyone I was talking to in person, not really my groups, but just in general life, it was like brick wall, you know, it was like block, 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 block. And when we hit these phases, it is because we're going through a transition in our life purpose. It is because something is shifting and growing and changing. And, you know, what was really interesting about that is it took me, you know, a good year to get online properly, you know, and figure it out. And then once I, you know, I was still teaching workshops and stuff in person. And it got to a point where I was like, I need to just put all my energy into reality awareness online. And that's what I did in January 2017. And I've been online ever since, right? And that was a big transition. And then I didn't realize until probably the last, I want to say 6 to 8 weeks, I think it was when I started to get close to finishing my book, that this really, the gravity of this transition of my life purpose really started to take effect. For the past 2 to 3 years online, I've been feeling so agitated, in a sense that I'd write a blog and people would be like, that's like the longest blog ever. Like, that's like the longest bit of text ever. And I'm like, yep. And then there's other people who are like, you know, it was too long, I'm not reading it. And I'm like, why would you even comment like that? Why don't you just scroll on past? Like, or there'd be people that comment something and I'm like, did you read the whole blog? Because if you'd read the whole thing, the whole post, you'd see that I like spoke about that. That's not what the point. And they're like, oh, I was busy. And I'm like, well, don't fucking read it. Don't comment. Don't, you know, and I'd be so agitated. But what that was showing me is that my purpose was expanding. It was like, and every time I wrote a blog, I'm like, not what I'm being called to do, because it just gets lost in translation and it gets lost in the others and it gets like pushed out into social media and lost forever. Ultimately, that's the way I was feeling. And it was because transitioning into writing books. Now, as I shared on my other live stream not long ago, you know, like when I first had my spiritual awakening in 2005, all I kept hearing is write books. And like, you know, you go through my computer and there's like so many documents in my computer of like this book or this is my book, or, you know, like, and they're really just all sort of journal diary entries of what was going on in my life at that time. And, you know, as I said on the last live stream, like me writing this book now has been like, I've you know, when I was writing it, I was like, there is no way a year, a day, a month before now that I could have written this book. Like, you know, after 17 years, say, hi, Stazzy, this is Staz. Here's my big fluff cat. Out of all the cats, there's one fluffy one. Yeah, so what do I really want to share about that? My life purpose is going through a big change. So, you know, and there's not one moment more that I could have written my book before now, right? And it's not like, what do I really want to share about this? I guess it's hard to put into words, but for some reason I was gutted to share this for whatever reason. I think because when I came online, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I came online to do, but I also was just figuring it out as I go. And honestly, I've had 3 clients step up in the last 6 to 8 weeks. This eclipse has like kicked them into gear. And it's so fucking exciting to watch when you're like healing. And then it's like go time into your purpose. Like there's such a switch and it's so fucking awesome to witness. Like I just, working with my clients is like, brings me the greatest joy, apart from my daughter and my animals, right? But, and surfing. But it's like, you know, this is like the most rewarding fucking thing ever, is seeing people go from the biggest trauma to the biggest, greatest success in their life and doing what they love. And, you know, and it's just like, it's like, this is what I'm born for, right? Helping my clients in this way. So a Life Purpose Accelerator, my 12-month mentorship closes today, actually in a few hours, about 12 hours-ish. From now. So send me a message if you'd like the details for that. It is my 12-month program. It's what I love working with my clients in, and it does like we go through these cycles of healing, and then it's like there's a shift, because the whole time it's like, what's my purpose? And it's like it drops in, and then it's like poof, it drops in. So anyway, the point is, I'll pop the link in now as well. So my clients have just like stepped up and coming into this place of, you know, like I know that I think the biggest shift, what I'm trying to say is that 7 years ago when I first came online, I was still working with clients. I was figuring it out. Obviously my client database grew really significantly because going from 10 people in a workshop or a yoga class, like, to, you know, having the world at your fingertips. Yes, the link, thank you. I start talking again. You know, is a big deal, right? And so I was figuring it out and I was going through so much in my personal life, but I just shared whatever. Every day I got up and I blogged and I live streamed. And if you go to my self-help page on my website, you'll see there's a huge resource library. I'm like, because I would just talk about everything and anything, right? And it was so good for me. It was like, oh my God, I finally found my outlet. I finally found, you know, what I was supposed to do. I was just like, oh my God, people can hear my message and I don't look like a crazy person walking up to the people on the street that I know I can help, right? I was like, I can help you with this and I've got this side, like, and that's because that's what we do. We're healers. We fucking got an answer for everything because we're so intuitively tapped in. The message comes from spirit. It's not even us, but that's why we've got this like resource library. Like, I don't know, it's not even the Akashic Records, it's a resource library of spirit, because that's what it is. Like, that's what we do. Like, that's why we help people. That's why, right? But so many people don't know how to channel that, and we're like covered in our own trauma. We don't know how to what, you know, blah, blah, right? Anyway, this is what I do with my clients. Life Purpose Accelerate. I'm popping the link in because I'm getting in a flow of talking now. So I've just pinned that to the top. So, okay. So 7 years ago, came online, sharing everything and anything, right? And the thing about my clients, the 3 clients that have really just like kicked into gear with this eclipse, like I'm just witnessing it. It's just like the best. It's like priceless. I can't even. There's no words for that feeling. Like, this is my job is done in a way. And so the thing is that a lot of people are like, tell me what my purpose is. Let me figure it out and then I will. And I'm like, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You need to start taking action. One of the life purpose rules is you are showing the next step when you're in the step. When you're in the step, you're showing the next step. That's how it works. A lot of my content was created was because I'm talking to a client that asked me a question, and then content is created because spirit gives me the answer. That's not me, right? We channel that. We do that. Every single person does that all the time. They're just not conscious of it. And they also don't know how to channel it. They don't know how to put that into their purpose. That's what I do. I help people fine tune that and put that into their purpose. I help people realize how fucking connected they are when they're being told they're crazy or there's something wrong with them, or right? So witnessing my clients step up, I'm like, yeah. And they're just starting to do the step, and they do the step. And they're like, the thing that I fucking love about it is that they're doing the step, and then they'll come in and give me a message, and they're like, Hannah, and then this other thing came through, and while I was doing it, I'm like, this is what I fucking talk about. And I say it like all the time. And I'm like, until people actually do it, they don't understand. And then it's like fuel. Like, give me more. Is it an addiction? Definitely becomes one. Can become one. Can become one if we don't have that awareness, right? So anyway, the point is that I have been feeling guilty. I mean, like, and guilt, remorse is part of the grieving process, right? There's so many stages of the guilt process, of the grieving process that people I guess don't understand. And this is where I do, you know, sort of, I don't really go into it in this book. I'm already writing my second book, if you hadn't gathered already. As soon as I'm off to the editor. And like yesterday I was feeling a bit lost because I'm in the process, like in the middle of like sending it back forth, like between the editor and the book cover, like the formatter. And it's like, I noticed yesterday, I'm like in this fucking limbo, and I fucking hate that. I hate this waiting around limbo shit. I'm like, snap the fuck out of it. And like I had a big meditate last night, and the first thing I heard was like, write your book. And I'm like, oh yeah, the next book. And then everything became clear. And I'm like, okay, see what happens. We hear the answer. The next step. But there is a limbo process of birthing, like back and forth, right? When you're birthing anything into the world, when you're birthing you, when you're, you know, when you're going through grief and trauma, and then you're like this, you know, like, and this is the part of the thing. I was like, I finished my books, this grieving process. I know when I get it out, it'll be like another grieving process. It's like, and this old part of me is fucking dying. And, you know, and that I've noticed that a lot recently, in essence of like, you know, like I live out here, like I fucking miss the beach. Like I am a mermaid, like surfing fixes me. But as I've been talking about in my blogs and stuff recently in my videos, that I know that I had to have everything stripped away to heal what I've healed, right? Like I could have easily lived in suburbia and continued with my surfing and my gym and my healthy way of living forever and being happy, but I wouldn't have had this level of spiritual growth had everything been stripped away from me. Yeah, anyway, sorry, I'm like, didn't I just share that on the last live stream? Anyway, I'm just gonna share something, but I think I shared on the last live stream. Okay, so what do I want to share about this? Oh yeah, because my client the other day, she booked a psychic reading and spoken to her for 3 years, and it was like the 3-year bubble point. You know, it was so interesting. You know, when she came back, and anyway, it's always significant. I'm like, oh, it was 3 years ago we had a call. How interesting, you know, like this 3-year cycle, and then she's like popping into this new reality, which is what happens when on a 3-year point. It's like it's a really distinct point, the 3-year mark, because when we're a baby, when we're a child, for the first 3 years of our life, we are in the mother's aura. So you know how like we have our own bubble of energy, right? When a mother is pregnant and we have a child, the child was actually still in our aura for 3 years. And at 3 years, they pop out and they've got their own aura and they're their own little being now. And that's, you know, why people say the terrible twos, that 2 to 3 years, okay, is like, still in your aura. But I'm my own person, but I'm still here. Like, you know, and it's like this ready to go into the world as their own little being, right? We see that, right? I don't believe in terrible twos. I've got a whole different perspective on emotions and crying, as we've discovered from the start of this live stream. Talking about the kids, in essence, is a whole different story. But same, right? Anyway, the point is that's why the crucial 2 to 3 year mark is so important. When you're healing or going through a big change or birthing a project in the world or anything like that, because that 2 to 3 year mark is when it's starting to become its own consciousness, when it's starting to have its own energy, when it's starting to have its own being, right? That 3-year mark is crucial for it to, you know, leave the mother's aura, if you may, and have its own being. So you can be like putting all this work in, putting all this work in, putting all this work in, feeling no progress, feeling no progress, feeling, oh my God, what's happening? Same goes with relationship, career, project, child, like anything. Healing, right? It's like nothing's happening. 2 to 3 year mark, you're like, ooh, what's happening? Ooh, you start to shift the reality, and then boof, like at 3 years, it's like, oh, right, something happened. And you might be grieving again, because from the 3-year point, remember, it's like it starts all over again, because it's like a whole new energy. It's got its whole new thing, right? So it's so important to check in. That 3-year mark is really, really crucial. So many crucial points, but that one's really significant. So okay, where was I going with that? I'm in a flow. I thought that was how it works. Exactly. Yeah, people can wait around for the thing. It doesn't, no, movement creates movement, and the ideas come when you're doing the thing. Life purpose rules. Okay, so what else did I want to talk about that? Oh yeah, so I was on the client call. 3 years. So I was on the client call, and she's like, how are you going? At the end of our call, she asked me how it's going. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. And I've found a lot of peace and happiness here. I wrote a post about that long ago. But ultimately, my soul thrives at the ocean. Like it does. Environment is fucking everything. And I'm knowing that. And that's why it's been harder being out here. And I'm just going to share it here. I might have shared it on the other live stream, but I do need to say this because it just come back again. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but maybe you guys didn't watch the other live stream. I'm just going to say it again because I fucking pulled a card, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, because I'm out of time. time is really strange. Well, it was in the 10-day eclipse window. So I pulled a card. I was at my altar crying, pulled a card. So I either meditate or I cry. It's my healing space, right? And processing and journaling and whatever needs to come, I sit in that space, right? And this particular time I was crying and I pulled a card, and I've seen this card before. It was the tiger. I can't remember what its proper name. It was the tiger out of the White Light Oracle, and it was 333 hertz. And I've pulled that card so many times, read the book so many fucking times, and I've read the fucking book, and there was a part in there, I can't remember exactly, don't quote me on this, it's not in front of me, and it said something like it was either a Tibetan monk or something like that, was called to go to this town and, you know, state, this place, and he was called to stay there because it was 333, the tiger, you know, it's like for 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days, to exorcise the demons off the land. And I'm like, are you fucking for real? Like, I've read that card so many times. I've so many times I've read that card. Like, do you know what I mean? And I'm like, I've never read that part before. Get a message when we really need to hear it, right? Someone can tell us 10 times and then one day we're like, oh my God, I've never heard this before. Yeah. It's just the right time to really hear it. That's healing, right? And I was like, are you fucking for real? Like, I've been here for just over 2.5 years now. My lease is up 1 month before it would be 3 years, 3 days, 3 months and 3 years, whatever that thing. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I don't want to stay here. I didn't want to stay here for this winter, but you know, it is what it is. And I'm just like, haven't I already exercised the demons off the land? Like, I haven't, do you know what I mean? If you guys know me and my history here, yeah, it was really significant. Anyway, the point of me sharing that is that, like, especially in the last 18 months, I've been getting strongly that I'm like, as much as I want to leave here, it's not my time to leave yet. And in the last maybe 8 months, it's been so clear of like, the land doesn't want me to leave yet. That's a message that I kept getting. And I was like, okay, what else am I meant to do here? You know, like, I have done a lot of work on this land since I've been here. And the reason I'm sharing this is because if we don't know why we're being called to certain areas, environments, people, hang around towns, cities, travel, land, like, we don't, you know, when we're a healer, of course we can tap into it, but sometimes we don't know why we're being called to certain places. Like, I didn't know I was going to end up out here. And I know that a lot of it is that I've had to write my book out here. That's been really clear, obviously, since writing my book too. And I'm like, okay, it's done. Can I go now? But then this morning, if you look at my story, like, the mornings out here are beautiful. And, you know, like, of course, there's so much beauty of it. And I've really started to tap into that because I've been starting to really, apart from like gone through the grief of it, of losing and leaving my old life. I'm not 28 anymore. I'm now 38. Not where I thought I'd be in my life. What's going on? Like the same thing as when I was 28, right? These cycles, yeah, these 10-year cycles. But it's also a part of it catches up to a point where, so we can catch up to now. So we're not living in the past. So we're not wishing we were somewhere else, because a lot of the grief when I got here was how much I was like rushing to get out of my old place, rushing to get away from that place, rushing, you know, and I'm like, fuck, I love that place. I used to walk to the beach, for fuck's sake. I used to surf all the time. I used to be able to go there and be there in 5 minutes in the car. Like, do you know what I mean? And I'm like, I was rushing to get away from that. And that's part of this grieving process of like grieving that I rushed to get out of it. And then I've been consciously allowing myself to be here and fucking enjoy it. The peace and quiet, the no neighbors, they're away from everyone. Like, all you can hear right now is the fucking dog drinking water. When she finishes, you can't hear anything else. Maybe a fly buzzing past. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I've been training myself to enjoy this because you know what? I fucking asked for it. I asked to be away from neighbors, from traffic, from people. Like, I asked for this. I fucking asked for this. I don't know. I can hear the fly buzzing. There's no wind at the moment. I think I can hear the pool filter down there. I think that's what I can hear. Any slight car or like motor noise, I'm like, what is that? So loud. And me forcing myself to enjoy where I am, because there's aspects that I love, but there's aspects that I hate, the driving, being far away from the ocean. But I've learned to find different ways to ground me, to enjoy the space and the peace. Because when I go into town or go somewhere, or I'm at someone's house, I can fucking hear the traffic. I'm like, wow, that's loud. I'm like, oh, I can't hear that. Sometimes if the wind's coming from a direction, I can hear the highway, like miles away. But some, like, depends on the way the wind's coming and bringing the sound in, right? So it's so important, like, you know, this grieving my old self hasn't been easy. Going back to the client call, she said, you know, when I think of you, I said, because I said to her, like, my soul, I miss the ocean. Like, I'm a mermaid, you know, like, ultimately I'm a mermaid, and it does something to me. It heals me. And Minnie, what you doing? Spotted something. You know, ultimately when I said that to her, she's like, you know, when I think of Hannah, I think of her sitting on the beach with her black hat, just so full and confident and free in herself and doing what she wants. And I was just lost, like, I didn't cry just then, but like on the call. But when I got off, I went for a walk, and I fucking, oh my God, I grieved. But, you know, it was like all this shit was going on. That was when Bear was missing. And it was so stressful, and the wild dogs had come through, and it's just like triggered the trauma from the dog attack. Like, it was on the 18-month mark, right? So this stuff happened on the 18-month mark just the other week. Like, Bear was missing. Thought the wild dogs had got him. I'd been attacked by but wild dogs might as well been. Well, actually, no, they might as well not been. That I got attacked by dogs, you know, 18 months ago. So on the 18-month mark, it was like it all happened again, but in a different way, but it was the same. Like, fuck, do you know what I mean? And this is why these timeline points when we're grieving something is so fucking crucial to check in with, because when it feels like it's, what's happening, losing my mind, it's just happening again, but on a different like way, but it's the same. Like, it's because it's like on a timeline point. I guarantee you it will be every single fucking time. Like, it will be, right? It's so important to check in. And it's not like, oh, it's happening again. It's like, no, it's another chance to grieve, another chance to get it out of my fucking body, right? So point of me sharing that, oh yeah, the grief. And I was like standing up the top of the hill. I was like so stressed out. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing out here? Like, you know, at the top of the hill, sometimes it's beautiful, and sometimes I'm just like, there is nothing out here, and what am I doing out here in the middle of fucking nowhere? Like, do you know what I mean? And it just hit me, and like the grief was just like, you know, because my client's words, and like, and I know that Hannah sitting on the beach surfing, carefree, live streaming, talking about whatever the fuck she wants to, no care in the world, like free as a fucking butterfly, like free as a bird, whatever, like gypsy, kind-hearted soul, like before all the trauma fucking caught up with her and everyone told her that she was crazy and a psychic and shouldn't be doing this stupid shit. Like, you know, before that really fucking hit me, right? The gravity of their words from people that I fucking loved and thought that, you know, I'm like, is that how you really fucking think about me? Because you just fucking killed me, right? Like, literally just destroyed my heart. And I was just grieving at the top of the hill, just like the deepest grief. And I was just like hot and sweaty and just like, what the fuck am I doing here? And like, and it was just like, I miss her so much. I miss her so much. I fucking miss her so much. And me grieving that part of myself is what started to bring it back. And this is where I was saying before, I'm not sure if you're still here or not, the lady who lost her dad recently or last year, you know, like when we grieve, when we can grieve it, it allows us to feel closer, because the grief is like a brick wall in between us and them in the connection and parts of ourselves, right? And when we can grieve it, it comes back to wholeness, you know, it comes back to wholeness. And it's so, so important. Like that's what we're all craving for, right? That's what healing's all about, to come back to the full and wholeness, complete self, like, you know. And part of me getting myself back living out here is, you know, remembering like, where's that happy, healthy Hannah, so carefree, like where's she gone? And this is like, and that was the questions I was asking, like, you know, when it all started to hit me living out here, and I was like, where's she gone? And then it's like, oh, all these things happened, and I'm like grieving them now, and it's been fucking this like 3 years of healing. So as much as I've been exercising the demons off the land, I think I've also been exercising the demons out of my own heart, which have been stuck there because of all the grief that opens up, you know, dark portals, because grief, you know, and all the emotions get stored in our body, and it causes disease and illnesses. But it's also like a tear and a rip in your aura that allows any other, you know, entities to come in, like at the end of the day, right? And people are like, oh, we need to like exercise the demons, and, you know, they're crazy, put them in a psych ward. And it's kind of like, man, they just need to fucking cry. Like, hello, you know. Some people ask me, I'm just going to answer this question that you may be wondering, is like, well, why did I end up out here? Like, why am I still out there? Why don't you just move? Like, why are you out there? Like, why did you move out there? And I'm like, well, at the time it was the only place we could get a fucking house, right? Like 2 years ago, when like I'd been trying to move house for 2 years, and then we went on a road trip because I was like, okay, maybe we're not meant to live here. Maybe we're not meant to get a house here, because if after 2 years of trying, it still fucking didn't happen. So I'm like, okay, we'll get in the car, and we drove, and it was COVID and lockdown, and I'm like, you know, there's so many reasons for that road trip. But it was also like, where are we meant to be, God? Like, where are we meant to be? And literally when we ended up down in Victoria, and that was a whole dark phase and trauma releasing freaking surfacing shit in itself, which is probably why we had to go. I was so upset, and I went into town because we were off grid on a property in the middle of winter in Victoria. Don't ask me. It was so fucking like, what? The places we need to go. And even so, you know, and I was so upset, I went into town and I found a health food shop in the middle of freaking, I don't know, bumfuck wherever the fuck we were. And I bought deodorant. And when I got home back to the place, I ended up looking at the label of the deodorant properly, and it was like made in Noosa Hinterland. And I'm like, oh, and I just started, like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, my home. And I was like, oh, maybe that's my home. Where have I ended up? At that time, I didn't know I was going to move here, right? We were on this road trip, still had nowhere to live, ended up here. And now I live in the Noosa Hinterland. And people ask me, why did you move there? And I'm like, because it was the only place we could get at the time. It was the only place that accepted us. And obviously meant to be here. I technically asked for it as well. I asked for a place just out of town, quiet, away from people, so I could film, do my book. Like, do you know what I mean? I fucking asked for this. Everyone wants to live in the country until they realize how much hard work it is, unless it's in your fucking blood, I think. Yes. Awesome. Still listening. Multitasking is always the best way. So... okay, what else do I want to say about that? Grieving my old self. I feel like there was one more thing I was going to say. Oh, yeah. The other thing that's been coming back, and when I was on that property in Victoria, and it was like horrid for me, you know, as well, had its beauty in its own accord. It was very dark and cold, and wake up and there's ice on my car and it's -2, and I've never really experienced that level of cold before. And I know that's not really cold for some people who are listening around the world. For me, it's cold because in Queensland, Australia, we don't get that weather. So in Victoria, and I'm like turning my car on to like melt the ice and all this sort of shit. And I remember when we're leaving, and I was so upset, and I was just like, what the fuck are we doing here? Why, what, how? Like, I was just grieving mess of like, what the fuck, you know, brought us here. And I was walking out in the paddock down there asking this question, and the song came in my head, and I can't remember off the top of my head now, but it's the song off Frozen, you know, the movie Frozen, that she's so make me cry, that she, you know, hears and she follows, you know. I'm sure we all know that theme song. Whatever it is. And it came in my head. And literally, like, that's what I do. I follow where I'm being called to go. I follow the next step. I don't really plan. And every time I try to plan, those plans get pulled out from underneath my feet. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I don't work in normal mainstream world. I've never functioned the way normal people function. I don't live a normal life. I never have. My life works on manifestation and miracles and magic, and I follow the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and I'm led to places to heal the darkest aspects of humanity, because that is a big part of my purpose, to hold a level of space that not many people experience in their entire lifetime. I didn't choose to be estranged from my family consciously, but unconsciously, purpose consciously, I know that I chose this life for whatever reason. I don't know what that is, but at this point in time, and the level of grief that I'm leaving my old life behind, is so that I can be free in the full aspect of my purpose and my soul and what I'm actually meant to do. Part of my grief is grieving the fact that I thought that, you know, as we're being imprinted and ingrained to have the white picket fence lifestyle and the marriage and the kids and all of those things, I'm like, that's so, you know, like, it's not that I don't want that with the right person, but it's like I forget that that's not what I'm here to do. And I feel like a level of my purpose has just stepped up and expanded. And really, when I think about my dream life and what I've really dreamed and envisioned for my entire life since the first moment I was spiritually awakened, and it came to me like a fucking book, maybe the pun, but is literally like, that was never in the dream, not on a normal life timeline dream. Like that's not the dream. It's the dream, but it's not a normal dream. Right? So I feel like what's flicked for me in this last eclipse is letting go of that, because this eclipse is tying into when I was spiritually awakened 17 years ago. And something is birthing out of me. And I fucking tapped into her last night when I was meditating, and it was, it's like, oh, this, I can feel her, and she's something else. And I wouldn't have got here to her, to this aspect of me that I'm stepping into, if I didn't let myself grieve the life that I've lived and I thought I was going to live, and to allow myself to be in the void. Because when you grieve that hard of everything, there's no more anchors. Memories are an anchor that keeps us in a certain timeline and a certain frequency. And when we grieve, those dissipate and there's nothing. The life and the memories we've lived to date without the grief become part of who we are. Not separate, not a memory anchoring us to a particular timeline, but they become who we are. And when we come into this place, there's something brand new here. Not many people reach that, because it's scary to release all the anchors, all the threads, all the things that hold us here to reality. Without that, what have we got? What's that saying? Oh, honey, but what if you fly? You know that saying? You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's about all I want to say about that. Life Purpose Accelerator closes tonight. Send me a message if you want to talk about this. Working, mentoring for the next 12 months. This is the highest level. Actually, it's the second highest level. The highest level was in person. Send me a message if you want to talk about it, discuss if this is right for you. Otherwise, the link is there. You can jump straight in and we can start this acceleration into becoming who you've always been born to be.